Okay, I'm recording. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, namaste.
Long
First and
time no
foremost,
see.
thank you so much for having me back again in
Yes.
Oviedo.
How's everything back there in the States, Oklahoma?
Wonderful. We're working with the Shala and Mysore Yoga Traditions conference coming up and so many things, but quite good.
We have a new shower, no?
I do, yes. Yoga on Main. It's in a nice location.
In the city, no?
Yeah.
And everything is going okay, no? With the shower.
Absolutely. But what I don't have is this amazing church right outside the window of my shala like you do at Casa del Yoga.
Oh,
I
yes, yes, yes,
can't
yes.
compete with that
So
kind
I
of
can be, so faith can come into me straight as an
absolutely.
arrow. And do you have a morning program? No.
Not at the
Early
moment.
morning?
I'm doing a lot of private work there, and we have some classes in the afternoon. It's actually just a very small space, so
Yes.
it's low stress and easy.
Okay, let's see if one day we can go and see you there.
I would love it.
Okay, Andrew, for people who don't know you, how long have you been doing yoga?
Thirty.
What was your
5 or 6 years. I think 1984 I started. I sort of lost track at some point.
1984? Okay, so it's 30, it's 40 years.
Oh, I'm getting old. What to do?
We have to change the ads because we put plus 3 decades. It's forced.
Okay. Well, it's sneaking up, but time is passing and I continue to do this. So that's it. I was 14 when I began. So really it should be like 38 years because
Yes, 14. And you start with whom? With your something to do with your parents, no?
Yes, my father and I began together, and Cliff Barber was our first teacher. And Cliff is no longer with us, but he was actually a little known ascetic who lived for many years in the island of Crete. And I would go there in the summers whenever I could. Um, I visited him a number of
Did
times
you go
there.
there with your father or by yourself?
Well, he came to Oklahoma and taught us when I was 14. But then as I got a bit older and started to travel, I would go and spend time with him in Crete. So I have my father to thank really for this yoga exposure that I got. And you're a dad, and it's so tricky to get a kid to do yoga. I think it takes masterful diplomacy and quite a bit of tact. And somehow he made discipline look cool to me, and I just love to spend time with him. And we practiced together for many different years. And then it slowly became my thing, and I started traveling and went
And
to
your
India.
father is a long time practitioner. He practiced all his life, no?
Yes, well, we started together, so he spent the last 30 years or so doing it.
Yeah, yeah. And he did the he also knew the Ashtanga sequences and so on.
Yeah, yeah. I often use him as an example. He did primary series only for his whole yoga career, and I I often thought, we really should have got him to do a broader range of postures. It's not quite, enough diversity of movement, in my opinion. But anyway, he was very dedicated and very regular with his practice, and he just quietly did it. He didn't aspire to be a yoga teacher or travel around the world or have social media accounts or anything. He just did his practice.
Yeah, and his body opens up with time, no? Even though he started a bit late compared to you.
It did. it did. He he had Parkinson's towards the end of his life, and Parkinson's makes the body very stiff. So it
Yeah,
kind
and
of
the
went the
meditation
other
makes
way.
you, if no.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I have my father to thank for getting me started with yoga, and since that time, I opened a Ashtanga yoga studio in 1999, and I ran a yoga studio in my hometown here since that time.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
and
For the ones who don't know, Cliff Barber is like this whole time practitioner. And after I think it was 1989, he quit from the world, no? And he just go into some kind of cottage cave in Crete, and he stayed there the rest of his life, no? Living like a sadhu.
it's true. He had a mud hut. It was a round one. I sat in it many times, and he was a real ascetic. He had no shoes and no money, and he faced old age, sickness, and death, and end of life stuff with absolutely nothing, no home, no money, nothing like this. And at any time, he would tell you he had the best life and everything was taken care of. And he was a fearless man and very free person.
That's whole yoga. When we say yoga is 1,000 years old, that's the old yoga, right?
Indeed, indeed. No, he lived his practice, and he wasn't.
Okay, come back to the old yoga when I ask you about Mysore traditions. But so you open your yoga studio, and then there was a time when you meet BNS Iyengar, right? We are
Yes,
the 90s or later.
yeah. Later, I think. Let's see. I'm not very good with dates, but um, he came to America about 8 years ago. So, and it was his 90th birthday. So
No, but before that, you practiced with him or no?
oh yeah, many times. No, that was,
In Mysore,
yeah, yeah. No, I went to him the first time in 95.
95.
Mhm.
Okay. And you also practiced with Patavi Joyce,
I did. I came and practiced 1990, Tom Joyce.
but you connected much more with BNS, no?
I did. At the time, I didn't have the money to
Go
practice in
to
the gym.
Patavi.
And somebody told me about him, and I went and met him, and he just had these sparkly eyes and this great smile. And our teachers, it's like falling in love, and once you fall in love with someone, your friends can tell you, "Oh, that person is terrible. Don't date them. You'll just laugh at them and do what you want." And it was a bit like that. He had time for me. He spoke English well, and we established a connection that continues to this day.
Until today.
Yeah.
And which other teachers were important to you?
You know,
Or
I've been blessed with many great teachers, and
can you name a couple? Or
so Cliff was kind of my first teacher, and then I went and studied with Punjabi Joyce, and I had a wonderful experience. And then I began studying with BNS Iyengar, but Danny Paradise, Nancy Gilgoff, David Williams, David Swinson. I've Robert Bustani. I honestly, I learned from everybody. I learned things from you when I came to your shala. I really just working, in different studios around the world, observing what people do and noticing what works and incorporating that. While I do adhere to the fixed sequence approach of primary series and the structure that we all share with this Ashtanga yoga, I feel like there are yoga communities all over the world sharing brilliant ideas and creating brilliant yoga communities and interaction and techniques. And that I'm really just participating and sharing in that. But my teachers generally were all very open-minded and very loving, compassionate people who thought that this should be shared with as many people as
You're
possible.
not jealous. And uh, we all learn these Ashtanga sequences either in one tradition or another, and we all get a kind of hooked with the sequence. It releases these, I don't know, hormones that make you feel so good.
Yes.
And most of us get a bit attached to it, no? That's a
Addicted?
fact.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
But this is the question now. I'm in the middle 40s and my body's changing a little bit. And I think if there isn't overemphasis on the asana practice, or second question, can asana practice be a spiritual practice and then somehow connect with whole yoga, like the one we talked about, Cliff?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. I remember one of the Ramakrishna Swamis said once, in 100 years, none of us are going to be doing this. You know, like asana practice is a temporary thing, and it only works while we're healthy enough to do it. And at some point, toward the end of our life, we probably won't be in that position. So when I started making the film Mysore Yoga Traditions, and I had an opportunity to start speaking with the Sanskrit scholars and the elders in Mysore, that this sort of basic accusation that they had, the one thing they were not happy about is that they felt like yoga was being used as a means to just enjoy our senses more. Just be healthy, do yoga, have more chocolate, have more sex, have more fun, enjoy life more by doing yoga and being healthy. And that's not far from the truth, really. But
We all
they're
want to be happy.
we all want to be happy, no doubt. And I like everything that's fun. But their point was, hey guys, look, this is a spiritual practice, and these asanas can take you into very deep places within yourself, and you should use it for what it was intended to do, which is to set you free as a human being and help you to evolve out of the things which cause you to suffer. And that message has been really consistent and clear. And so we're supposed to follow yamas and yayamas. We're supposed to read yoga text, and we're supposed to think about our lives and our actions and our words and what we're doing and what we want and why it is we want those things, and try to apply yoga ideology to our whole life, not just get on the mat. But when I see somebody who is really just approaching yoga as a physical practice, and they're showing up to class and they're doing their practice, I don't discourage that. I think that's wonderful. And it just that there are layers of yoga that become interesting as you get deeper into it. And everybody arrives at that in their own time or not. All we can do as teachers is just try to give everybody an opportunity to look further than asana practice if they want to. And if they don't, fine, carry on. Inhale, raise your arms. That's okay. And we all get something from our yoga practice, regardless of what we're, trying to do.
But in our teaching, for myself, Cliff, sometimes I feel I don't give this enough space for people to inquire about this more internal practices, or at least internal feelings and sensations. Like they come, they do their series, they go, and what's happening inside? They don't really know. Don't-
Well, you you know, when we're at home, our own yoga studio, where we teach day in and day out, we have sort of one kind of circumstance. And I have to say, I can't talk too much about philosophy. I can, but they get bored of hearing me. And I feel that it's not the right thing. And they came for exercise. Yeah, I better give them exercise. Maybe I can say something for 10 seconds at the end, or if I feel like it. But I think we have to be like that. I think that that's the appropriate way of serving our community. If it's a yoga asana class, then let it be so. But I think that you and I share a lot of common interest in, we spend our life doing this. Of course, we want to know what else is beyond that. We can look and see that, okay, in another 20 years, I'm not going to be better at this, probably. So is it
My capotazen is getting worse.
well, but don't we deserve the dignity of aging with grace and
Oh,
realizing
that's
that
true.
all those years of hard work that we put into our asana practice help to shape our minds and our intellect and make us the people that we are. And you don't have to do kapotasana to convince me that you're a yogi. Like, it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the physical practice worked for me, still works in internal levels.
yeah.
I can see that on me, but maybe it's lack of faith from myself that I'm not exactly sure what's happening in the others. Maybe it's professor arrogance that wants to know everything or control everything instead of just letting things flow and take their course.
Well, there is the screwed up yogi syndrome, and it's a known phenomenon. I've mentioned it in the sutras. I forget which verse. The thing about practicing without detachment leads to merging with the forces of nature and reaching the place of the disincarnate gods. It's something like that. What I always took that to mean is that we increase our prana through this practice, and it gives us these extraordinary experiences that we often remember for our whole life. But increasing our prana doesn't necessarily make us good people. It just gives us more energy to do what we're doing. And if we're doing things which are not necessarily constructive, we're able to do them a lot faster and more effectively. So, can it get you in trouble? Sure. But I think that with basic instruction like yamas and niyamas, the idea that, uh, well, I'll just say one of my favorite things to say lately. Okay, Ashtanga people wonder what is traditional yoga. They do. They argue about it. My yoga is traditional. You're not traditional. You're doing some other posture. This primary series is traditional yoga. Well, what I think traditional yoga is, based on Yamunacharya's ancient text called Gitartha Sangraha. He was one of the acharyas in Krishnamacharya's lineage, and he said, practice 4 yogas habitually. First one is samadhi. You got to do your asana practice, your pranayama, whatever it is you're doing, and get super happy from it. Get the hit, get the high, feel good. If you can't do that, you're not successful. Second one, you have to keep it. You have to hold on to it in your day-to-day life, and as you go about your business and take care of your family, etc. You have to learn how to hold on to that good feeling. And the third one is we have to remember that we're all connected. We have to understand and experience the fact that we're all connected, and that me and you and everybody in this world share a common existence. And the fourth one is that if you do that, if you could do all those three, then you'll certainly feel the suffering of humanity, we will notice that the people around us are not always very happy. You don't have to look far to see suffering in the world. And our yoga practice should address that somehow. We have to do something to help humanity, to help our families, to help our communities, our society. So those four things: get really happy doing yoga, stay happy, remember that we're all connected, and try to help humanity. Anybody doing that in my book is a traditional yogi. I don't care if you're doing primary series or any other postural practice, doing a, a practice that is, done together with a teacher, following the teacher's instructions, being faithful to what they taught you, being respectful of their instruction. All of that is absolutely right and good and part of the story. And I think that's important. But these other things are more important to me. Yeah.
And changing slowly from subject. Now that in the past 7, 8 years you have been doing these conferences, the Mysore Yoga Traditions, and you have been looking into old texts and really old yoga, um, everything matches when
Everything
matches.
matches. No,
Everything.
no. The Indian philosophy is full of conflicting ideas, but I tell you, I want to do traditional yoga. I have that same desire. I do this my whole life, and so how to connect with that tradition? When I made the film Mysore Yoga Traditions, I got to talk to all these amazing scholars, and I just thought, oh my God, speaking to the elders in the community has to be the right way to connect with the tradition. I just listen to these people talk about life and understand their view and try to teach, according to that. So that's been the basic idea. We had such a great time making the film. We invited the same people to do a Mysore conference and invited a bunch of our friends and students, and all. It was just a magical thing. Once we realized that these scholars, a lot of them had never had an opportunity to speak to an international group. And when we got people, I think we had like 25 nationalities there, and they really rose to the occasion. So it was good for everybody. And that was 7 years ago. We're about to have our seventh annual Mysore conference. That will be January 13th through 22nd, 25. And then immediately after that, I'll have a no-kote yoga immersion where we take people to this ancient village outside of Mysore where a lot of the foundations of Mysore's yoga tradition happened historically. And then Joey Paz will lead a retreat with BNS Iyengar after that. So we're basically offering exposure and connection to Mysore's yoga culture. And I think that listening to the elders is really a great way to connect with the tradition.
Talking with all these sages and all these scholars and knowledgeable people, there wasn't a time when they were saying something or they were explaining something, and then you said to yourself, "Oh, I'm not doing this. This is not nothing to do at all of what am I doing all these years." You never had that thought. Never.
Time, all the time. Yeah, yeah. We're all just somewhere, and they point out stuff that I should be working on and didn't even think of, and that's why they're my teachers. It's a lifelong process, and I'm a kindergartner in the scheme of things, of course, but their compassion is huge. They're ready to teach anybody who sincerely wants to learn, and yeah. So does it step on my toes sometimes? Well, yeah, it does. I need to straighten up. Let's face it.
So let me just make a resume for the ones who don't know exactly. You did the movie Mysore Yoga Traditions in 2018?
I think we released in 2015. Might have been 18.
And after that, you took all these people you interview and you joined them together in this conference, which usually you do in January, February, no?
Yeah.
And you meet all together in Mysore, south of India, and you teach asana along
Yes,
with Joey Paz and Bryce Delrich.
absolutely. Both of those
Help
guys
you
are
know.
Sedal Yoga
Right,
too.
great. They've been here in Asturias also. Great
Yeah.
friends. And in the afternoons, you listen to these people. Just sit and listen to them, right?
Yeah, we and then what I try to orchestrate is to have an international, multicultural conversation amongst ourselves and say, well, what did all that mean to you? And to you and you and talk about it together and try to digest these ancient ideas and understand how they apply to our current lives.
Yeah. And in the beginning, you had like a 3 week format, but now it's shorter, right?
10 days. I think we did 2 weeks the first time, and we kind of pulled it down to 10 days. And then the Melkote immersion is 5 days. So there's
Then
a chance.
Michael, you consider this immersion like a follow up of the conferences or something
Basically,
you
it is.
do differently?
So in the conference, we're studying with many different scholars and having a kind of a diverse exposure. We're also visiting the Maharaja Sanskrit College and Jagan Mohan Palace, and there's an ashram, and we do outings and just see the history of the place. But Malkote is an ancient village where Ramanuja once lived and where Vishishta Advaita philosophy was founded. And it has a huge significance in the yoga tradition that Sri Krishnamacharya came from. So what we do is we go deep with one person, and that would be Dr. M.A. Alwar, who's a current living acharya in that tradition, meaning he's a spiritual teacher from that lineage. And he takes us to all of these temples and holy places, which he actually grew up in and knows absolutely everything about. And he teaches us about the philosophy and history and takes us on an in-depth journey into that ancient culture. So it is an immersion. We practice yoga in a 1,000-year-old temple called Kalyani,
Cool.
and it's a real connection with the ancient side of the yoga that we practice.
Okay, and people can find that in your webpage, right?
Yeah, MysoreYogaTraditions.com. So,
The
oh,
Melkote immersion is also in Mysore Yoga
yeah,
Traditions.com, but
yeah.
also on your webpage. No, your well, I write it down the web pages, but your webpage is Ashtanga Yoga Studio, no?
AshtangAYogaStudio.com is my oldest website that I've had for 20 odd years. And MysoreYogaTraditions.com, I created that when we made the film and started to work with this Mysore Yoga Traditions project. One other thing I want to mention before I forget about it, we do take people to India to experience this culture and this knowledge, etc. But we also organize ongoing online studies. And during COVID, of course, we couldn't do our conference in India, so we started doing it online. And we realized that these guys are very capable of doing Zoom lessons with us. And we started slowly working with that more and more. Joey Paws has been instrumental in helping that to happen. He's got a couple of courses going on himself. I'm I'm doing it as well. And so together, we're really trying to make this kind of learning accessible to people wherever they are.
The conferences will also be online, no? You have a
It
online
is,
modality.
people can tune in remotely to the conference. The only thing is it's limited by time zone and
You mean by?
by time zone. So 3 p.m. in the afternoon in India is actually okay in Spain and Europe, but in America, that's like very, very early in the morning.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
anyway, that's our
No
one
problem of getting
limitation.
around the world. So we pick up all this information, all these studies, and we get to Asturias, to North Spain. Andrew will be here from the 14th to the 18th of November. Okay, we decided to make this double course, double workshop. We call it the all level workshop. And the second is teachers and committed practitioners, committed students. Okay. And the all level workshop is inside the teachers workshop. Not only teachers, teachers and committed students. Okay? So you can do the whole thing, 5 days, or you can do the Friday to Sunday all level workshop. Okay. First question: in the 5 days, in the teachers and the committed students, we have a Mysore space. There will be 3 Mysore classes: Thursday, Friday, and Monday. Okay, and people can pop by and do their Ashtanga practice independently of they come from Patabi Joyce tradition or VNS or whatever. No,
Oh yeah,
go and do our stuff. You'll support us.
you bet, you bet. No, I all yoga is good yoga, and I have so many dear friends from the Punjabi Joyce tradition. You yourself, of course, and we. BNS Iyengar studied with Punjabi Joyce for 13 years or 12. It all comes from him. We had to,
Yes.
like, he created these sequences. So, of course,
Why did he change these little things? Just to make a difference? Or he felt it was better?
BNS,
Yes.
the only thing he really does differently is step to the left. And he has all of these
A
philosophical
couple of
reasons.
postures that he changes now, like
Uh, minor.
Shishasana B is the side bending.
Well, it reminds me very much of, like, you could study with two well-known Ashtanga teachers from the West, and you would go to them and you would see that they have some small differences in their approach and their techniques, and
Yeah,
they're doing the
totally.
same thing, but they have their own ideas. It's the same. And they're both very similar in the fact that they will kick you out of class if you don't do what they say. So we
That's old
we
school.
just yeah, that's old school. I've seen it happen. So when I'm there, I support what he's teaching, and I like stepping to the left. And you know why? Because people can see me on the right side of the pose. If they step to the left, even if they're facing the camera, when they turn to the right side, they're looking at the camera. If
The first side.
yeah, so you can explain the posture a little more easily. There, otherwise, if they step to the
You don't
right,
have to move to the end of the room so they
exactly,
can see.
you have to run to the other side of the room to show what to do sometimes. And so there is a practical aspect to that really works well. And
Maybe
but
that was the reason. I don't know why you changed it.
well, it's more about Prakriti and Purusha and Ida and
Yeah, it's to the feminine side. No, you start
yeah,
yeah, the
and
mother nurturing side.
he has different ideas about what constitutes the left or right side of certain postures. And it's like apples and oranges. I mean, I can see the logic both ways. So all of that is not important to me. what's important to me is to share whatever I know to help people enjoy their practice deeper into their practices, to give information, knowledge that can be applied. And I try to strengthen yoga communities wherever I go. I don't, I'm not saying that anything is flawed or wrong. It's what we love enough to practice for our whole life that matters. And that's my goal.
And I don't know if this happens to you. In my school, I teach self-practice, Mysore style, no? Most standard schools in the world. And then once a week, I do a LED class. I change the schedules because I have several times, but once a week. And many people just pop by on the LED class. They're following. They text me, "Oh, when it's LED class, when it's LED class." But we both know that this Mysore practice is the more deeper practice because you are with yourself at your own pace, with your own breathing. Do you think there is like, I don't know if these last years, new generations, I felt like some people are, they don't give it's hard for them to do their self practice. You feel the same. I don't know if
I
it's
think
about concentration technology. I don't know.
it's the same everywhere. Mysore practice belongs in mature yoga communities where there's been someone there practicing teaching for a number of years or decades. And beginners who are new to yoga tend to be a little bit put off by Mysore style because they feel self-conscious. They really would prefer a led class. I think both styles of teaching have merit. Um, I agree that you have to turn people loose at some point, and you can observe them and give them information and teach them in a way that is not possible in a led class in Mysore format. You know, it's much more real. And I have taught beginners in Mysore, and a Mysore taught beginner quickly evolves into a very good student because they're not used to just being talked through. They're remembering very quickly the sequences because they have to. And I think it's very empowering. But in general, we're just studio owners and we're trying to create our business and our student base. And lead class has an advantage, no doubt.
Yeah. So we'll have three Mysore classes, and on Saturday morning, you'll lead us through primary, and on Sunday you lead us through. You'll depend on the group, intermediates. No.
Yeah, we'll do a gentle approach to the intermediate series and teach it in a way that's safe and appropriate for everybody. And that's one of the things I like to say in my workshops. You know, trying the poses is fine, and adding and playing and experimenting is all fine. But
About
slowly building your practice with the help of a Mysore teacher, step by step over a period of time, is really like what we're aspiring to do. Um, there's a very big difference between playfully going through intermediate series and trying some of the postures and seeing some of the adaptations and ways that we can share it together, and actually practicing that every day without missing a breath as part of a concentrated yoga practice. And for that, we need the help of our local teachers who know us and are able to help us to navigate that.
okay. Second, we'll have like 7 hours of asana adjustment and
Yeah.
assistance, and a bit like getting to know the postures. Um, isn't That's when I asked about uh, overemphasis on asana, or it's just self-knowledge?
I I love asana, of course, and it's like Prakriti and Purusha to me. The Purusha is all this philosophy stuff and why we do it and all this, but the fact is we have to teach these asanas, and I've collected ideas and techniques from people all over the world for a long time, and basically I'll be sharing with you guys what I've learned. I do a lot of what I call reciprocal inhibition, where I'm basically asking people to push me instead of me push them. I also use a technique called isometric stretch, where we engage the muscle groups before we stretch them. So there's a lot of basically resistance adjusting. Thai massage, Thai body work has been a big part of my personal journey. So I use some of the ideas from that in my adjustment of postures. And lately, have you ever noticed that all Ashtanga teachers, or many of them, carry around a cloth? They carry like a lungi or some kind of a cloth, a towel with them.
Yeah, but just with a cloth, no?
Yeah, it's very common. And
You talk to
and
me
yet,
about
well, I
you.
noticed that there are whole styles of bodywear based on using the same cloth, basically. So in my studio, I started experimenting this last year or so with all the kinds of adjustments that we can use the cloth to do. And it's a really beautiful way of working with people, and it's very effective.
It
So
embraces them, no? Like it's I think
yeah,
around.
you can wrap it around their neck and pull, it's actually very versatile, and
You
there's
teach us that, no? You
absolutely,
bring this
yeah,
cloth
yeah,
adjustment. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, so and we'll have a 4 hour Thai massage workshop.
absolutely. We'll be covering the four classical positions of Thai, and I don't think that yogis have to be body workers, but to not know any body work is a kind of a drawback for a yogi. I think we should all kind of have some tools in our belt to help one another with.
And this Thai massage workshop is also suitable for people who don't do yoga.
It is.
Can they come
They
to
can.
that model,
You
or they
don't need
need
to have
to
a
be
partner.
into yoga?
The more of a background you have with yoga, the more easily you're going to tend to be able to grab onto these ideas and concepts. But technically, no. All you have to be is interested in helping other people, and also connecting with other people. And Thai bodywork is an ancient discipline. It's influenced by yoga, and I think it's very useful for creating connections in the community.
Yeah, yeah. And there will be a class on Saturday, which is including both workshops, all levels and teachers and committed students, which is the thing I have been exploring the most myself, which is the Mudra Bandha thing. Okay? I've been doing like I read the texts and I do this kind of embodied philology. Some people say I read about the mudra, you just the way they do it in the text, and you just try to do it what's in the words, even though I nobody taught me that. And the mudra thing for me is becoming like a really deep world. I get a lot more concentrated. If I usually what I do is like I put these mudras inside the asana sequences.
Mhm.
Like I'm doing Urdhva Mukha, and then I just bend my elbows, tuck my chin, hold my breath, stay there, keep going on, do Dhyana Bandha in some postures. I do Dhyana Bandha in Adho Mukha, in Dandasana, in Baddha Konasana, in Shirshasana, I do Dhyana Bandha. So I'm just trying to figure out how to use all these things. And for me, it's the, the area where I'm exploring most right now.
That's beautiful.
Was about it's beautiful, no? It's a
That's what
wonderful.
I do too. I can only just share what I found out doing what you're doing. It's playing, and I try to incorporate these things Um, that to me, this area of yoga is what defines asana from other types of physical discipline. Uh, if you want to find a distinction between yoga and Pilates or gymnastics or martial art, etc., well,
But
it's these internal energetic systems. I mean, nobody invented the push-up. Every stretch that you can imagine has been done by people in various physical disciplines, but it's working with these bandhas and this upward force in the body, this pranavayu, this creating a dominance of pranavayu and getting into ecstatic, beautiful states of mind through manipulation of our vital energy in our body and our breath, of course, and it starts with that. That's what yoga is all about. So I commend you, and I look forward to sharing with you and also learning what you're finding out what you're experiencing because we're all an international community. We're in this together.
just one thing, BNS used to teach the mudras from Garanda Samhita, right? He had like this 20 mudras thing.
He does have
How,
a
how did
20
he how did he teach the mudras, or still does?
still does, as far as I know, one at a time with lots of stories and laughter and
Or you just
animated.
do like Janga mudra? You do, you stop, right? Or
He
you
has
or he flows through mudras.
it wasn't so much a flow. It was like one at a time, and then he has various counts, and he gives you an assignment essentially, and says, "Okay, I want you to do this 5 times. I want you to hold your breath for this many seconds. I want you to experience this." And so first he would give the theory and the practical application and how to do it, and then he asks you to do it while he observes you. It's well taught, like any yoga
And then
technique.
you go home and you do.
You go home and you do. Yeah, yeah. And mudras are, I mean, it's a kind of a seal. Generally, it's a redirecting of vital force inside the body. It belongs in the practice of a person who's done enough asana to understand energetic movement in their body. I think early in our process, we may not really relate to that or understand it. And a little later on, it becomes very clear and evident that there are these energetics in our body and how to try to condense that and manipulate it is, that's what mudras are all about. Those are the tools used to achieve that. So I think they're essential, and they're also the kind of stepping stone between having a physically based, exercise oriented kind of approach to yoga and moving into a more internal, energetic aspect of your practice and understanding what changes are happening in our nervous systems and our personal lives.
If you don't quit yoga, sooner or later you fall into that, right?
I think so.
It's inevitable.
I mean, I think for myself, but most of us who do this for a long time become curious about other aspects.
And then they go deeper, of course. No?
Absolutely.
And finally, I think it's Saturday afternoon. We have, you call it the darshan.
Yeah,
It's more the philosophy lineage, stories about connected with the Mysore traditions. No?
absolutely. Mysore Yoga Parampara is what I'll be talking about. And Parampara is a word that most Ashtanga people have heard, and we basically associate it with this, physical practice that we're doing. But over the years of study and making films, I've learned about what the old people in Mysore call Mysore Yoga Parampara, and basically I'll be telling the story of Nathamuni Sampradaya, which was the spiritual tradition that Sri Krishnamacharya came from. And there are sort of two ways we can try to look at the history of yoga. And the first most obvious one is, where did these poses come from? They're doing these postures. How old are they? How do we know? Where are they from? From what source can we document the antiquity or lack of it in these postures? And that's legitimate, but it's confusing and it's hard to know exactly. It's a cultural art form and it's very complex. There's a lot that could be said about that. But if you try to document and understand the spiritual tradition that Krishnamacharya came down through, it's not that hard. That's been around for 1,000 years. Ramanuja created Vishishtadvaita philosophy. Krishnamacharya was an Iyengar, and he comes from a particular lineage. There is a whole bunch of sages and saints and text and history that pertain to that. And I like to try to give people a little flavor of the kind of social political background that this practice was developed in, and also the philosophical worldview of the people who gave us this practice. Like, that's been my query. I was like, well, what do you guys believe? What does life look like through your eyes? If I could see that, what would it look like?
You look to the spiritual tradition of Krishnamacharya, and maybe you understand better why he does yoga the way he does, even though the spiritual tradition is not necessarily connected to a yoga asana mudra bandha practice, right?
Well, it is and it isn't. Especially when you get into the advanced sequences and even some of the intermediate, what they're doing is they're telling stories with their bodies.
Yeah,
And
the
it,
Vishwamitrasana and Vashishtasana and
yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that.
Why does Vishishtasana come before Vishwamitrasana? Only because he was the yogi and the Vishwamitra was his student. And it begins to start telling stories. And those stories absolutely do come from that spiritual tradition that's so prevalent and deep in Mysore. So it's just about cultural connection and starting to understand a little more about this background of what it is that we've done and are doing, because it's precious to me. It's affected my life in so many ways. And of course, I'm curious and really I'm just sharing my own process with my students and friends around the world. And I want to mention Mysore Yoga Traditions podcast, which I've only put up
Yes,
a few
yes, I
episodes so far, but there'll be a lot
heard
more.
the first two already. The second one I have to repeat because I need the text, the Upanishad.
Uh,
This.
yeah, Shvatara
Well, you
Upanishad.
understand, but you need to repeat it with the words because it goes word by word, like really old school scripture teaching.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in the first episode, for the ones who don't know, Andrew explains really well how the Mysore traditions project started and evolved. Okay, we'll put it on commentaries also. And that's it. We learn through stories and through metaphors, right?
That's it.
Let things go inside yourself, right?
Yeah, these guys teach this stuff and it rattles around in my brain for decades, years, and slowly shifts into a distilled form. And at some point, I realized, oh, that's what they meant. Okay. I mean, it's a process. So I just want to share that process. And I also, I have an enormous amount of content and I feel the kind of pressure to share that. Like, what's the point of all of it if I don't share it? So the podcast is really a way for me to just try to make some of this information available to people. And some of it will be me and other friends like Bryce and Joey and yourself at some point too, I hope, just talking about yoga. But other episodes will be some particular talk. And I'll just say a few words about that person and that talk and why I think it's relevant, and then just turn you guys loose to
It takes a
speak.
lot of time, no, to do all these internet
Well,
things.
it's what I love to do. So I make time as best I can.
Okay, so November, I'll see you. You have
Really
a
looking
place
forward
to
to
stay,
it.
you know.
Such a lovely yoga community at Casa del Yoga, and thank you so much for having me back again. I
Yeah,
really look forward to
we'll have
sharing
a
more.
great time. Okay,
Okay.
so bye bye, Le.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.